The Senate hearing room in Washington, D.C. was tense, cameras rolling, press lining the walls, and every seat filled. What was supposed to be a routine oversight session quickly turned into the most watched moment in America. At the center of it all sat Karoline Leavitt, the White House press secretary under President Trump. Young, composed, and sharp as a blade, she represented more than an administration. She represented a generation tired of being ignored. Across from her, Senator Adam Schiff leaned back in his leather chair, the corners of his mouth curling into a smug smile. He adjusted his microphone and, with an all-too-familiar tone of political condescension, addressed the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "we're here today with the president's press secretary, or should I say his social media intern." A few chuckles echoed. Schiff continued, "Karoline, do you actually understand the scope of your job, or are you just here to recite the president's tweets?" The jab landed hard, but Karoline didn't even flinch. She sat still, her expression unreadable. But behind those calm eyes, the entire room could feel it. Something was coming. Schiff wasn't done. "Miss Leavitt, maybe if you spent less time posing for Instagram and more time studying how a government works, you wouldn't be struggling to answer simple questions." The room rippled with laughter. Senators leaned back. Reporters scribbled faster. The moment was meant to humiliate her. But Karoline didn't even blink. She slowly turned her head toward Schiff, locked eyes, and said nothing. Not yet. Cameras zoomed in, catching the tension like a wire pulled tight. From the observation gallery, President Trump watched quietly. So did First Lady Melania, hands folded, eyes fixed on Karoline. The whole world seemed to pause, waiting. And then, she moved. Karoline reached forward, pulled a single document from the stack before her, and slid it across the table toward Senator Schiff. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was calm, cold, controlled. "Senator Schiff," she said, "I didn't come here to play politics. I came here to talk about the truth. But since you brought up job responsibilities," she tapped the paper gently, "you might want to explain why your name appears in a federal investigation involving $12 million in misused pandemic relief funds." Silence. The room froze. Schiff's smirk vanished. Reporters stopped writing. Even the cameras hesitated, unsure whether to pan or zoom. From the back row, someone whispered, "Did she just say 12 million?" Karoline sat back slowly, her eyes never leaving Schiff's. "You can mock my age, my title, even my presence here. But what you can't mock is this." She pointed to the seal on the document. "This isn't social media, Senator. This is federal." Boom. The entire atmosphere cracked. A single sentence had flipped the entire room upside down. Senator Schiff opened his mouth to respond, but no sound came out. His lips moved, but his voice had vanished. Even the committee chair looked stunned. From the press box, someone gasped, "This is going viral in real time." Karoline didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The weight of what she had just revealed echoed louder than any accusation. And just like that, everything changed. What began as an attempt to humiliate her turned into the most powerful moment of truth the Senate had seen in years. And this was only the beginning. Senator Schiff leaned forward again, now clearly rattled, but he wasn't ready to surrender. "You come in here waving documents, Miss Leavitt," he said, his voice tightening. "But at the end of the day, you're just a teenage spokesperson repeating lines from a teleprompter. That's all this administration seems to be, performance over substance." Laughter returned to the room, but this time, it was thinner, less confident. Karoline didn't flinch. Her fingers remained folded. Her eyes stayed locked on him, calm, controlled, like a storm that hadn't touched down yet. But Schiff wasn't finished. "Tell me something," he said, tilting his head like a prosecutor. "Have you even read a full intelligence briefing? Or do they just give you talking points to post on social media?" Some senators chuckled nervously. The cameras zoomed in again. This wasn't just a political exchange anymore. It was a battle for credibility. Schiff, the career politician. Leavitt, the underestimated newcomer. He reached for his water, sipped, then struck again. "You may have fooled your followers on Twitter, Miss Leavitt, but this is the Senate floor. We deal with facts here, not hashtags." At that moment, a tight shot of Karoline's face flashed across screens nationwide. No blink, no sigh, no movement. Just resolve. She waited, letting the silence build not for drama, but for precision. Then, finally, she leaned forward. Just a few inches. Her voice, still calm, still razor sharp. "Senator," she said, "what concerns me isn't that you underestimate me. What concerns me is that you underestimate the American people." Gasps, not loud but present. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. "You think if you mock my age, you weaken my message. But I didn't come here to impress you. I came here to tell the truth. And the truth doesn't care how old I am." The press gallery buzzed. Reporters whispered, sensing the moment shifting. Karoline straightened her papers, ready to move forward. But Schiff? He was just getting desperate. And Karoline? She was just getting started. What Karoline Leavitt does next was never planned, not scripted, not rehearsed, but it flipped the room and the nation in a single move. If you thought the last moment was powerful, what's coming will leave you speechless. Don't blink. You're about to witness a political turning point, unfold live, raw, and impossible to ignore. Karoline could have clapped back. She could have matched Schiff's sarcasm, jab for jab. But she didn't. She didn't take the bait, she took control. Slowly, with quiet precision, she reached toward the stack of folders in front of her. Her fingers slid one forward thicker than the rest. Stamped in the corner was a government seal, glinting faintly under the chamber lights. The room grew still. Even the laughter from moments ago had disappeared, replaced by a slow-burning curiosity. "I wasn't planning to bring this up today," Karoline said softly, her voice calm but deliberate. "But since we're talking about truth, maybe it's time we look at yours." She pushed the folder across the polished table toward Senator Schiff. "This," she said, "is an official document reviewed, verified, and signed by federal investigators." All eyes locked on it. Karoline continued, not rushing, not pausing for effect, just speaking plainly. "Inside is a detailed breakdown of pandemic relief disbursements. Who received them, when, where they went, and more importantly, who approved them." She tapped the folder once. "Your name, Senator Schiff, appears 5 separate times." Gasps, audible, real. Schiff froze. His confident posture slumped. His hand twitched near his glass of water but didn't lift it. Karoline leaned back, her tone still composed. "This isn't about Twitter, or speeches, or sound bites. It's about money meant for small businesses that never saw a dime. And it's about a paper trail that leads straight to your office." For a few seconds, total silence. Even the chairman looked stunned. Reporters blinked, unsure whether to reach for their pens or their phones. "You can dismiss me," she said quietly, "but you won't dismiss this." The folder sat on the table, unopened, but heavier than anything else in the room. And just like that, the hearing wasn't about her anymore. It was about him. And Karoline Leavitt had just flipped the script. Senator Schiff didn't say a word. He stared at the sealed folder like it was ticking, like any second it would explode, and it already had. The hearing room, moments ago filled with laughter, fell into a silence so deep you could hear a camera lens adjust. Even the senators who'd snickered before now looked stunned. Karoline didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply opened her folder again, this time revealing receipts, email logs, and a flowchart of shell companies. "These are businesses that never existed," she said. "Created during the height of the pandemic, funded with emergency relief money, authorized by your office, Senator Schiff." Schiff's hand trembled. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked. This is taken out of context," he stammered. Karoline's voice remained ice steady. "The context," she said, "is that people lost their homes while those funds vanished, and you signed every approval." The hearing room erupted. Reporters lunged for their phones. Photographers clicked wildly. Senators whispered in disbelief. Staffers scrambled. Phones buzzed nonstop. The clip of Karoline's statement was already live on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok under a single caption. She said it, on record, to his face. Millions watched the moment unfold in real time. A nurse in Ohio paused mid-shift to rewind it. A teacher in Texas projected it in class. A Vietnam vet in Georgia sat silently, saluting the screen. This wasn't just politics anymore. It was a reckoning. And Karoline Leavitt had just become the face of it. The documents were on record. The chamber had erupted. But what came next wasn't political. It was personal. Across America, something shifted. The outrage wasn't just about numbers or corruption anymore. It was about people. Families who had been ignored finally felt heard. In a quiet home in West Virginia, a single mother whispered to her children. She said what I've been screaming for years. In a Detroit hospital, a nurse paused during her rounds. She turned to her patient, an elderly veteran, and said, "You see her? She's fighting for people like you." Social media flooded with one line. Karoline didn't defend herself. She defended all of us. Letters began pouring in, handwritten, raw, and emotional. One came from a retired firefighter. "My business shut down during COVID. I applied for help 3 times. Nothing. Now I know where the money went. Thank you for exposing it." Another, from a schoolteacher in Nevada. "My students cried watching you speak, not because you were angry, but because you were brave." Then came the moment no one could forget. Outside the Capitol, a crowd had gathered not in protest, but in unity. A young boy named Ethan, just 10 years old and fighting cancer, sat in a wheelchair holding a hand-drawn sign. "Thank you for saving my hospital." The image went viral instantly. Karoline saw it on a staffer's phone. Her expression softened, and for the first time since the hearing began, her eyes filled with tears. "This is why I spoke," she said quietly. "Not for applause, but for kids like Ethan." Reporters followed the story. Families shared their pain. Nurses, veterans, farmers, students all said the same thing. She spoke for us. Karoline's words had done something rare. They healed, even as they exposed. She had gone into that chamber alone. But now, she carried a nation with her. The day after the hearing, Senator Adam Schiff's seat sat empty. No press conference, no defense, no rebuttal. Just silence. The man who once mocked a young press secretary in front of the nation was now nowhere to be found. But Karoline Leavitt? She didn't disappear. She walked back into that chamber the next morning, quietly. No cameras, no victory lap, just purpose. Reporters held their breath, expecting a speech. But she didn't deliver one. She placed a folder, the same one from yesterday, back onto the table. Then looked up. "I didn't come here for revenge," she said, voice steady. "I came because silence is killing the truth in this country." A pause. "We don't need louder leaders. We need braver ones." That was it. Simple, honest, mic drop. And that single sentence echoed far beyond the walls of Congress. Across the country, classrooms stopped to discuss what it means to speak when it's hardest. Churches replayed her clip during Sunday sermons. Firefighters watched during shift change. Truckers pulled over to listen again. Because this story wasn't about just one hearing. It was about a system finally being held accountable, not by a senator, not by a celebrity, but by a young woman who refused to stay quiet. Veterans called her courageous. Teachers called her a role model. Parents said she gave their children hope. And online? The internet exploded. Hashtags like #TruthTakesCourage, #CarolineSpeaks, and #TheFolder trended for days. One viral post read, "She didn't shout. She didn't insult. She just laid down the facts and let the truth speak for itself." Even comedians on late-night shows paused the jokes, admitting, "That wasn't a press secretary. That was a mirror America needed to face." And in the quiet corners of the country, the places no microphone reaches, people whispered the same thing. She spoke for us. Karoline's words weren't planned for impact. They were said because someone had to say them. I didn't come to win. I came to remind them the truth still matters. And in that moment, America didn't just watch a political reckoning, they felt something deeper. Hope that honesty could still shake the walls of power. Hope that courage still lives in quiet strength. Hope that maybe we're not so forgotten after all. When one young voice dares to speak the truth, the entire system has to listen. If you believe truth still matters, smash the like button, comment truth below, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story that needs to be told. Because this isn't just a moment, it's a movement.